Hello, my name is Yuka Akiyama from the University of Tokyo. Today I'm going to talk about a part of my PhD dissertation that I completed at Georgetown University last year. The focus of this presentation is multimodality, as the title suggests, and I hope to show you how multimodal practices impact the development of personal relationships that develop in the virtual context. In this talk, I'll introduce you to the past research on telecollaboration, focusing on the role of multimodality. I will then provide an overview of the current study and the project and explain the data analysis method focusing on the concepts of social presence and intertextuality. Next, I will show you the findings from analyzing 3 focal dyads discourse. And finally, I'll conclude my presentation with a discussion. So first, let me introduce you to the context of this study, namely telecollaboration. Telecollaboration is an online intercultural exchange between learners of different first languages. Hana and Denu 2009 argues that success of telecollaborative projects depends on the quality of personal relationships that develop between telecollaborative participants. That is, a good personal relationship leads to successful interactional outcomes. While the importance of personal relationships is recognized, the process of socialization has rarely been examined. Thus, this study aims to reveal the process of socialization, focusing on participants' multimodal practices. In video conferencing, for instance, we can use not only audio but also non-linguistic cues such as hand gestures, eye gaze, and body movement. We can also use functions like text chatting and screen sharing in conjunction with audio. And we can even use the materials around us while video conferencing. In this sense, video conferencing may be a closest approximation to face-to-face conversation. However, video mediation may create challenges in our communication. As such, Kern 2014 argues that video conferencing is a skill that develops over time. So the purpose of this study, therefore, is to examine ETandem participants' multimodal practices and their impact on the development of social interactions and personal relationships. One of the major contributions of this study, I hope, is that I examined the interaction not only in the designated modality of Google Hangouts, but also outside the official educational sphere. By examining their social interactions as a whole, this study examined what technological affordances the participants used, how they used them, and what impact such multimodal practices had on their interactions. Now, let me briefly describe the overview of the ETandem project. There were a total of 60 participants who took part in this study, 30 from Japan and 30 from the USA. Following the training, the participants interacted 9 times via Google Hangouts over 10 weeks. In each session, they spent the first 30 minutes in English and the remaining 30 minutes in Japanese. Of all the 30 dyads, this study selected 3 dyads for the focal analysis: Benjamin and Tomoya, who represent the most successful dyad, Edwin and Hiroyuki, who represent the least successful dyad, and Amy and Yoko, who started out unsuccessfully but became one of the most successful dyads in the end. Note that success here is defined based on the 3 criteria: 1, satisfaction; 2, continuity beyond the curricular requirement of 9 weeks; and 3, whether they had face-to-face interactions after the completion of the project. Now, I'd like to move on to data collection and analysis. To analyze the data, I used 2 theories that are relevant to the development of personal relationships: social presence theory and intertextuality. And in the following 2 slides, I will explain these concepts in detail. So the first theory is social presence. Social presence is a theory developed by Short et al. In 1976, and it means the degree of salience of the other person in online social interactions. For instance, people feel less social presence via email compared to when communicating via video conferencing. It is important to note here that social presence can influence the development of interpersonal relationships, as the more social presence means more sociable, warm, and personal environment for communication. Then how can we increase the degree of social presence by maximizing the affordances of technology mediation? One way for doing that is the use of multimodal bricolage, which means innovative and improvisational use of resources that are afforded by the local environment. For instance, when we are video conferencing, we can use things around us such as electronic dictionaries, Google Maps, and YouTube videos to deliver a message. Next, another theory that is relevant to the development of personal relationship is intertextuality. Intertextuality is defined as reshaping of prior text. It basically means repeating vocabulary, grammar, and ideas across various contexts and time. I paid attention to intertextuality in my analysis because it is reported to affirm conversational participants' mutual access to the shared repertoire and unite a social group. All right, so now I have walked you through the two theories that are relevant to the development of interpersonal relationships. Now let's take a look at the actual video interaction data to see how the three dyads use their multimodal resources. The first dyad we'll examine is Benjamin and Tomoya, who turned out to be the most successful dyad of all. Benjamin and Tomoya's interaction was particularly interesting from the multimodal discourse perspective. First, they became friends on Facebook before session 1 and got to know each other by looking at each other's profiles. Secondly, they maximized the technology affordances of Google Hangouts and Google Hangouts environment by the screen sharing function. Indeed, even from the very first interaction session, they used screen sharing and explored each other's hometown using Google Maps. In session 4, when Tomoya didn't understand what tetherball was, instead of one person trying to look up the word, they collaboratively searched for the definition, images, and a video of tetherball via screen sharing. And in session 8, they even played an online game together via screen sharing. This is a game called Go Go Nippon My First Trip to Japan, where the main character, who's American, goes to Japan and meets these two Japanese girls. Since this is a bilingual game that displays both Japanese and English text, they read out the bilingual text and created language learning opportunities. So in sum, it seems that Benjamin and Tomoya increased social presence by accessing the same visual information, and such virtual joint attention allowed them to collaboratively construct a conversation and increase the feeling of intimacy and connectedness. And now let's take a look at the interaction of Edwin and Hiroyuki, the least successful dyad of all, who were frustrated with each other and wanted to have their partner changed. And their analysis of their discourse revealed that this dyad suffered from limited social presence throughout the semester. For the sake of time, however, I can only show you one excerpt from session 8, in which Hiroyuki used his electronic dictionary to look up a word, while Edwin used Google Translate to engage in what I call cooperative word search. So in this excerpt, Hiroyuki is displayed on the right, Edwin on the left. So in this excerpt, Hiroyuki is trying to explain what tatami means. Tatami is a traditional floor mat in Japan, and Hiroyuki uses his electronic dictionary located to his left to explain what it is, as you can see in line 1. Moving on, in line 10, Edwin joins the word search by using Google Translate, while Hiroyuki still tries to explain the concept using his electronic dictionary. And finally, in line 13, Edwin asks if what Hiroyuki wanted to say was katai, a Japanese word for hard. And they reached mutual understanding in the end as a result of this cooperative search. As the analysis of the excerpt shows, thanks to the cooperative word search, Edwin and Hiroyuki were able to achieve intersubjectivity. Moreover, they achieved a relatively equal turn distribution. However, their interaction suffered from the lack of social presence because they took a division of labor approach to problem solving. In other words, they were not engaged with each other's conversational contribution. As this visual shows, Hiroyuki used the electronic dictionary outside the shared space where the interaction was taking place, and the presence of this workspace prevented them from co-constructing the conversation, which led to limited social presence. And finally, let's take a look at the interaction of Amy and Yoko, who changed their interactional behavior over time and became one of the most successful dyads in the end. This figure shows a longitudinal change in the technological tools Amy and Yoko used for communication. Yoko and Amy struggled in the first 3 weeks of the project, mainly due to their overemphasis on language learning. However, they became one of the most successful dyads after the critical turning point in the 4th interaction session, when Amy came out as gay and Yoko and Amy successfully negotiated heteronormativity. Following the critical incident in session 4, the dyad expanded their interactional sphere outside the curricular context of Google Hangouts and started to interact via Facebook Messenger. They continued to interact even after the conclusion of the project, and they had 5 more Google Hangout sessions after the 9th session, and met in Japan when Amy was in Japan for a summer course in Kyoto. Thus, I argue that the case of Amy and Yoko shows how their channel of communication went beyond the curricular context with the development of their interpersonal relationships, and increased shared repertoire between the two members of dyad united them as members of community, which in the end facilitated their sustainable partnership. So due to the limitation of time, I cannot show you the Facebook Messenger messages that were exchanged after session 4, but in a nutshell, the analysis of Amy and Yoko's interactions shows how intertextuality observed between Google Hangouts and Facebook Messenger, or what I call cross-platform intertextuality, further increased the sense of intimacy and being connected. So now that we've looked at the 3 dyad interactions, I'd like to move on to the discussion by first summarizing the 3 dyad multimodal practices. So this table shows the types of technological affordances that were utilized by the 3 dyads. I categorized the technology used into 3 types: affordances of Google Hangouts, tools to facilitate a video interaction, and communication outside Google Hangouts. First, of the 3 dyads, Edwin and Hiroyuki, so the least successful dyad, were the only dyad who didn't use either text chatting or screen sharing. The other dyads often negotiated meeting by maximizing the affordances of the Google Hangouts environment. Secondly, although it was found that all the 6 participants used some kind of dictionary, Edwin and Hiroyuki were the only dyad, both of whom didn't use an online dictionary. Edwin used Google Translate, while Hiroyuki used his electronic dictionary. Their cooperative word search led to their equal conversational contribution, but it decreased the sense of social presence. Next, what distinguished the Benjamin and Tomoya dyad was the use of various online tools via screen sharing. They collaboratively used Google Search, found Google Images, showed places via Google Maps, played YouTube videos, and even played a computer game together, all thanks to screen sharing, which afforded virtual joint attention. And finally, the third category was communication outside Google Hangouts. And while email was used by all the participants, as it was necessary to set up a time to talk on Google Hangouts, Benjamin and Tomoya and Amy and Yoko, the 2 successful dyads, became friends on Facebook and exchanged messages outside the curricular context. And such interactions across the 2 platforms resulted in increasing their shared repertoire and bonded them as friends. So, in summary, it seems that the first 2 types of technological affordances, so affordances of Google Hangouts and tools that facilitate video interaction, are considered the use of multimodal bricklage, and this led to increasing social presence. As for the last category, it was related to increasing intertextuality, which led to participants' confirmation to their ETandem community. Now I'd like to suggest the pedagogical implications. First, this study revealed the importance of medium on interactional processes, and consequently the development of interpersonal relationships. As Kern 2014 suggested, without fully understanding the power of medium, the effectiveness of online teaching won't reach its full potential, and thus telecollaborative practitioners and researchers need to keep this in mind. Secondly, although the past research on telecollaboration has focused mostly on language and cultural learning, we need to place digital literacy learning as one of the primary goals and benefits of telecollaboration because digital literacy and their use of technological affordances impacts the development of interpersonal relationships and, as a consequence, the opportunities for language and cultural learning. Thirdly, the analysis of the participants' interaction outside the curricular context revealed that their interaction in the wild impacted their social interaction as it increased intertextuality and facilitated their socializing. It is suggested that telecollaboration coordinators introduce some SNS tools such as WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger and encourage their use outside the curricular sphere so they could increase cross-platform intertextuality and bond as friends. And finally, based on the findings of this study, I'd like to suggest an ideal platform for this kind of ETandem project. First, the ideal platform should be equipped with a screen sharing function, as it would allow the two members of a dyad to access the same visual information, and increase the sense of sharing the same physical space. Secondly, since the findings of this study highlight the importance of virtual joint attention and collaborative word search, I argue that there should be a function through which two members of a dyad can do things concurrently by accessing the same visual information. For instance, just like working with a Google Doc online, the ideal platform should allow participants to see what the partner is writing. In conclusion, connecting with physically dislocated intercultural peers has never been easier via technology mediation. However, the very technology that connects us can create formidable challenges when it comes to feeling connected. Participants' multimodal practices, especially the use of technological affordances, influence their online social interactions. In turn, their social interactions expand into various technological platforms in accordance with the development of their personal relationships. This means that there is an intricate relationship between ETandem participants' multimodal practices and the development of interpersonal relationships. And I'd like to conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, please contact me via this email address.